Hello and welcome, friends. I knew it. It was the same day. It was the Day of Atonement. I was counting the days well, and I felt great joy when I learned that the date of my vacation this time would coincide with the evening preceding the Day of Atonement. And this is what happened. We spent the whole night on our way from Kabla to Jueda, and we arrived in the morning at our city that followed that day. My father decided to rest from the trouble of traveling after staying awake all night on our way, while my mother told me that she would accompany me to the courtyard, and she brought me food that she had prepared for me. So I ate it quickly, then we headed together to the courtyard in one of the carriages designated for going there for a simple fee. Inside myself, I did not like my mother to accompany me, but I could not stop her from doing that. On the way there, I was only thinking about one thing, how I would talk to Nadim while my mother was beside me, and because I know my mother well, I knew that she would not agree to my leaving for some time as my father used to do. So I found nothing but to surrender to reality and wait for any opportunity that might arise. When we arrived at the courtyard, I found my mother holding my hand, and she wanted us to reach the front near the stage. But I hesitated and excused myself to her that the middle of the courtyard was much better, and I insisted on my opinion until she yielded to my words. Our presence at the front of the courtyard meant the absence of an opportunity for Nadim to see me. As for the middle, he might come there after making sure that I did not go to the Eastern Meadow, and this is what actually happened. Hours passed, and we watched the day's ceremony. My mother was very attentive to what was happening on the platform, while I kept looking right, left, and back all the time, searching for him without paying attention to what was happening on the platform. I asked my mother if I could leave for a while, but she refused. I asked her multiple times, and she continued to refuse until I gave up hope of her acceptance. So I kept silent and continued looking around, hoping to see him. Then the execution ceremony of one of them ended, and instead of hearing a woman's trill of joy, we heard the scream of a woman coming from near us, saying that her money bag had been stolen. In a few seconds, a state of chaos and confusion occurred among the crowd around us, causing me to be separated from my mother by meters. Before I could reach her, I found a small hand pulling my jacket. I turned towards the owner. He was a small boy, perhaps 8 years old, with a dusty face and clothes. As soon as I looked at him, he silently pointed to the left side of his chest, then pointed with his hand toward the east. I then realized that Nadim was waiting there in the Eastern Meadow, so I thought for a few seconds, then looked out corner of my eye towards my mother. The state of chaos and confusion was still ongoing, so I slipped through the crowd towards the central eastern gate. The boy was walking in front of me with obvious flexibility between the legs of the crowding people until I reached the gate. He then left me and returned to the courtyard, and I continued my way to the bank of the dry river across the Eastern Meadow, where Nadim was waiting for me. So I said, "I thought I wouldn't see you today." He said, laughing. "I thought so, too, when I found your mother standing next to you," I said in surprise. "Were you in the courtyard?" He said, "Yes, in the middle of the courtyard next to you, but you didn't see me when you turned around more than once. I kept looking for you, until a state of chaos and confusion occurred after one of them was stolen at the time. I realized that your absence there was a good thing. The security officers would catch anyone they found from the people until the thief appeared." He said with a calm smile, "No one stole anything. Ryan and his older sister planned everything." That I said, "Who is Ryan?" He said, "The child who brought you here. He is one of my students. And his sister Dima is the one who screamed to create that commotion." I pursed my lips in wonder and said that girl will receive a big punishment from the security officers, he said. That is, if they catch her, they are both very good at escaping. So I said, laughing, "All this just to meet me?" He said, "Yes, I had to talk to you." So I smiled. Then we sat in our usual place, and I started telling him what happened to me in the past months. And in turn, he informed me that he has 16 students whom he teaches, among them Ryan, that smart, mischievous child. He told me about the difficulty of the women of Al-Nazala accepting the education of their children, But day after day, the number increased little by little. I congratulated him on what he did. I was really very happy inside. Then I asked him later if I could leave. I had to return to the middle of the courtyard. I knew that my mother will go crazy for my absence. So he shook his head in agreement with me. So I promised him that we would meet again on the Day of Atonement, which coincided with my next vacation after 6 months. So he said with full confidence, "At that time, I will have more students." And so I laughed as I got up and said, "I hope so, teacher." Then he also got up and we walked together towards the courtyard. He told me that he would not enter its surroundings. He would go back the way he came. The same child was sitting squatting near the outside of the eastern gate waiting for him. So I whispered in the Deems there, "Your friend..." Oh, he laughed, and we approached him, and then my heart almost jumped out of its place when a sudden rough voice shouted at us to stop. I turned to the side. It was a security officer with a rigid face and a huge build who passed me and approached Nadim and said with full mockery as he looked at his chest tattoo, "My offspring? Where are you going?" Nadim looked at the ground and said, "I will leave, sir." He circled him, examining his body, then searched his trousers in a humiliating manner. Nadim said, "Nothing there, sir." The policeman punched Nadim in the chest with his fist and said in a commanding tone, "Shut up." He continued his search. Nadim was looking at the ground without raising his eye or moving his body. The policeman didn't find anything in his trousers, and I thought he would let him go. But he stood in front of him, and as soon as Nadim raised his gaze from the ground and looked into his eye, he turned towards me and looked at me, examining me, before suddenly turning to Nadim and slapping his face with a sudden slap that almost knocked out his teeth, and said, "Don't come back here again. You dirty one." The Nasleys must stay in their holes. Nadim did not move. He looked at the ground, fixed in his place, while the child Ryan jumped up from his seat, afraid, and went back steps toward the courtyard gate, his eyes watching what was happening. Then some young men from 2 neighbors gathered near us and began to cast their sarcastic comments about the Nasleys. The policeman looked at them blankly and laughed as he circled Nadim, until he stopped again and slapped the other side of Nadim's face with a slap stronger than the first. My heart was beating strongly, and its beats accelerated more when I saw a trail of blood begin to flow on Nadim's face. But they reached their peak when I found Nadim raising the corner of his eye to me in great humility, before moving his gaze in defiance to the policeman, and the veins of his neck and arms swelled with blood after he clenched his fist. My heart almost jumped out of my chest when I saw Nadim curling his fist in preparation to punch the policeman in response to his abuse and insults for no reason. I found myself pushing my body in front of Nadim to stand as a barrier between them, and I quickly said to the policeman, "Sir, I am a student at the higher school for security officers in Kabbalah." He looked at me angrily as if he didn't believe me. I had nothing to prove my words, but I noticed that he looked at that dark triangle of skin below my neck, which my military clothes did not protect from the effect of the scorching sun during my training. So his features softened as if he was certain of my words when he saw it. So I continued, "My friend didn't do anything. He wasn't in the yard at all." He pursed his lips and murmured sarcastically, "My friend." The mocking youths were still watching what was happening, and behind them was Ryan, whose eyes did not move away from us. So the policeman said, "Get out of my face." S.O. I nodded my head before he said to me, "Do not befriend honorable women. You won't believe my words until one rapes you after gaining your trust. Then you will do to them more than I do." I did not comment on his words. I just took Nadim's hand and we left, while the youths did not stop mumbling their silly comments about me and Nadim. Then Ryan followed us to the southern square of the courtyard designated for carriages. So we stopped there, and I looked at Nadim, who had not raised his head to me since we moved away from the officer, and I said, "Never mind. You will find many difficulties on the way to our goal. They were raised with one view towards women. I know that the matter is very difficult, but one mistake will destroy everything you strive towards, and I do not want that, nor do you." He remained silent, There were tears shining in his eyes. I realized that he was struggling hard not to let them fall in front of me. The first time I feel the shame that women bear. But all I had was to comfort him. Then a little time passed before he spoke. Well, Gufrin, I will return to where I came from. I will see you after 6 months. I hope you stay well, and I wish you the same. Then he signaled to Ryan that he was leaving, so the boy blew his whistle, and his sister appeared from between the carts. She was about my age, and then they set off, leaving through the dirt road south of Courtyard. I stood watching them until they disappeared from my sight. Then I returned to the middle of the courtyard, and found my mother after much effort. In the following months at the officer's school, things became somewhat interesting after we started firearms and horsemanship training, in which I found myself, as if inside me there was a shooter and a knight who had been imprisoned all these past years until they finally found their way out between the walls of that school. But I never forgot what happened on the last day I met Nadim and what that officer did to us that day. And for a long time my dreams all revolved around what happened that day. Repeated slaps on Nadim's face, blood flowing from his face, his fist curling to make his way to the face of the one who humiliates him. But before that it collides with me to shatter me into small pieces scattered like glass fragments. After that, he tries to collect them but cannot, while the officer kneels beside those pieces to say, "You wouldn't believe me until he rapes you after gaining your trust, which point you'll do to them more than I do." So I woke up from my sleep in a terrible panic, not wanting to sleep again, and remained seated on my bed waiting for the wake-up call, until my imagination created an image of that officer from the target board designated for firearm training. So my shots would hit his head every time. The strange thing is that within 3 months, I was nominated as the best markswoman in my class to enter an internal competition between me and the best shooters in the older grades. The officer's face kept haunting my imagination every time I aimed at the board, and each time I achieved the best results. And my reputation spread throughout the school when I reached the final competition between me and the best shooter in the final grade, who had never lost to another student since joining the school. That day was the last day of the following 6 months. 2 wooden boards were erected in the middle of the schoolyard. Each board was carved in the shape of a man, while my competitor and I stood 30 meters away. And the students stood a few meters away from us in rows on all sides except the direction we were aiming towards. And the school's head teacher and other officer teachers sat on a side platform that rose a few feet off the ground, waiting for our competition to begin. Each competitor had 5 shots, the winner being the one who fired their shots with more accuracy and in faster time. And the competition ends as soon as one of us finishes. His corrections. I felt that the other student had enough self-confidence to hit the bullseye at a distance of more than 100 meters. Not 30, but I held myself together and looked at my target board and tried to conjure up the face of the officer I hated to replace it. And my face lit up when my mind quickly conjured up, and then the students' murmurs around us quieted down after one of the officers signaled them to be quiet. Then that officer turned to the chief instructor before turning to us and shouting at us to begin. So I raised my firearm in front of my eyes, closed my left eye, and began aiming toward the face of the officer that my imagination had conjured up. But I was surprised that it suddenly changed to the face of Nadim, and I found my hand pulling the trigger .5 consecutive shots without stopping, and silence fell over the place. So I looked behind me. Everyone was staring at me in disbelief as if they had opened their mouths and forgotten to close them. The other student had only fired 2 shots. So he looked at me in disbelief at what had happened. As for me, I turned again and looked at my target in astonishment. I didn't see it as a wooden board. My eyes saw him standing in front of me, with his bare chest and a tattoo on his chest, his head bleeding from the middle as he stared at me with broken eyes, while all the female students were rushing toward me to surround me in great joy. My eyes were still fixed on the wooden board that 2 officers were examining to announce the result, without my ears hearing any cheers from what my colleagues said, as if I had disconnected from the world for minutes. Then everyone calmed down again when the two officers finished examining the two panels and returned to the head teacher's platform and told him the result. So that expressions of astonishment appeared on his face before he descended from the platform and headed towards me. And he says to me with great happiness 5 corrections in a few seconds, all to the head something that has never happened from a student before. You are the best shooter in our school. Then he looked toward the students and said, it seems that the Baja platform shooter will become a lady for the first time in history. My name is Zai, and my uncle lived in the same valley as Mr. Nadim. I started learning from him at the age of 8, and after me, the number of students gradually increased until we were 16 students after the first 6 months, and 30 by the end of the first year, including Casa, and the same by the end of the second year, and the number continued to increase with our ideal months. I didn't know before how my master convinced our mothers to enroll in a small school, which didn't exceed a small courtyard in front of his house at the edge of our valley. He succeeded in that anyway. I was the closest student to him, and he started taking care of every matter of mine as if it were his own. He entrusted me with the secret of his relationship with Mrs. Omrin during the first month of learning under his guidance. I remember the rudimentary plan that he and I and my sister drew up together to distract Mrs. Omrin's mother so he could meet her before that day ended with an outcome that ruined everything for us. That day we returned walking along the dirt road to our valley. I don't remember him uttering a single word the whole way. My sister didn't know what happened and asked me in surprise about the reason for that severe silence and gloom that darkened our path. But I didn't answer her with anything. What I saw was enough to destroy the word I had built over the past 6 months before that incident. I was a small child, but I realized that we as women, no matter what our situation reaches, will remain the outcast class in this country. When we reached the edge of the valley, Dima was a few steps behind us. He said that we have no value in any place other than here. That's nonsense. Then he went home when Dima caught up with us. You have no value as long as you've found the rules. He said after we walked a few silent steps. The rules will change someday. So I looked at her with a sarcastic look, and she said mockingly, the rules are changing? Nadim al-Nasli dreams. My master did not respond to what she said, so I said, if I were in your place, I would not accept what the security officer did, even if it cost me my life. He said, I would have done it, but I promised Gufrin that I would not commit a crime that might lead me to the execution platform. My sister and I grumbled and decided to continue our path in silence. Despite my young age at the time, something inside me believed in one thing. Death on the courtyard platform is 1,000 times better than a life without dignity. But I reconsidered and said to myself, everyone has their life. They have the right to manage it as they wish, and I continue my lessons with my master, and I try to forget what I saw that day. Then another 6 months passed, and the day of Gufrin for the 7th month arrived, and we went together to the Judah courtyard to meet Mrs. Gufrin. That time was much easier than the first time. Mrs. Gufrin had come alone to the bank of the dry river where my master waited for her, however. What happened at their last meeting happened again from one of the young men of 2 neighbors, but after the lady left us, we were on our way to leave Judah when that fool intercepted our path and tried to harm my master when he saw his tattoo. And like the previous time, my master suppressed his anger to the extreme limit, and the young man continued his insults, and he punched my master hard in the middle of his chest. My master continued to suppress his anger. Then I saw his fist clench and felt he was about to return the punch. But he controlled himself in the end, and the boy left us after pouring a barrage of insults on us. I liked what happened and hated that we were so weak, and my hatred for people as a cola began to increase in my heart every day, and I found myself shouting at him unconsciously, "Why didn't you do it, my master?" He said calmly, "For your sake." I said with great disapproval, "I don't want that." He said, You will understand everything when you grow up, Rin. I kicked a stone with my foot on our way in a fit of rage, then ran away angrily from him without looking behind me, my inside screaming, I don't want to be like my master. Woe to that love that makes me weak. All that was going through my mind was the security officer's slaps on his face, and the taunt of the young Gartini man, and a strong punch in the middle of his chest without my master issuing any reaction. And I returned here to my mother's hut, and I retreated to one of its corners crying. And I said to myself as I sobbed, I hate Garden and its people, I hate them, and I hate the lady who does that to my master. She should have just left him alone. Living like the rest of the women, I remained in that miserable state until night fell and complete darkness covered our valley. And with every moment the resentment inside me towards Master Nadim increased until my decision popped into my mind not to complete my lessons with him. And anger ignited inside me at that time. And I got up from my place to go to him in the middle of the night to pour out what was in my quiver of stinging words and tell him frankly that I do not agree to complete my lessons with him, and I stepped out quickly from our hut, wiping my tears and whispering to myself what I would say I will not learn with you after today, you weak one. You were the closest of masters to me, but I will never agree to be like you one day to death even. And I completed my path between the dark, silent roads until I reached his hut located at the other end of the valley. There was a lamp lighting inside it. So I realized that he was inside, and
the darkest hour.